Good morning, friends and enemies. In today's video, we are going through the entire Week 11 fantasy football slate game by game, and we are ranking every running back as a start, a sit, or a flex, as we do every Wednesday. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you want this going forward, we will be doing the wide receiver version of this video tomorrow. Let's jump right into Thursday Night Football. We've got the New York Jets in Foxborough at the Patriots. The Patriots are 12.5-point favorites over the Jets at home. It's a 42.5-point total, which means Vegas doesn't expect a damn thing from the New York Jets on the offensive side of the ball. Breece Hall is playing really good ball, though. He looks explosive. He looks good. He's obviously the centerpiece of this offense. With Garrett Wilson out, I expect him to continue to try to run it through Breece Hall. Problem is, it's like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, or if that's vice versa, I forget what the phrase is. That's what the Patriots' run defense is, as I'm sure most of you guys have heard this stat by now. Last week, when Sean Tucker rushed for 53 yards, it was the first running back all year to top 50 yards against this New England run defense. As you can see, it's just right across the board. Fantasy points allowed, EPA per rush. They are pretty much the single toughest defense to run against. It's probably them in Seattle up there. So feel good about Breece, but I don't feel good about the matchup. So he's going to jump into the feels good category. On the flip side, if we look at the practice reports, we do have Ramondre Stevenson with the turf toe returning to a limited practice on both Monday and Tuesday. We don't have word on whether or not he's going to play. We obviously had a big time breakout game from Travion Henderson last week with the two big runs. I believe Terrell Jennings is also back to a limited practice for both Monday and Tuesday. So a good chance that he suits up and doesn't miss any time at all. The matchup is phenomenal. Obviously, the Jets defense got rid of their key pieces here. They're not a good run defense. They are not a good defense. They are not a good team. So if Ramondre's playing, I think the turf toe probably puts him into the shaky flex category. I do still think he has a role, and I would put Travion Henderson in the dub flex. This is if Ramondre's playing. If Ramondre does not play, we're going to move Travion Henderson up to the feels good category. Now, I'll say a couple things about it. Like it's easy to get overly hyped about Travion Henderson after last week when he had those explosive plays. That's very much part of his game. But there's also a world where those things don't happen, where you don't hit the big plays like we saw Saquon Barkley doing that all last year, not doing it this year. And if you don't hit those big plays, there's a lot of ceiling left on the table. And I could see Travion finish more in the RB, 15 to 20 range based on volume than anything else. But if Ramondre doesn't play, I'm going to move Travion Henderson up to the feels good category, and he'll likely be a top 12 to 15 running back option this week. If Ramondre doesn't play and Terrell Jennings does play, I would actually throw him into the shaky flex category because Terrell Jennings did have the first 3 carries of the Patriots game last week and then ended up getting hurt, so he missed some time. But they clearly went into the game thinking about this being a very split backfield. Maybe that changes based on Henderson's game, but I feel like they've shown us kind of what the split they want to have in that backfield up to this point in the season. Washington at Miami. We've got the Spain game, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. Devon Achane, of course, is going to be in the must-start category, just destroyed the Buffalo Bills. On the flip side, a little bit more confusing. Obviously, if all these guys play, Rodriguez, Ja'Cory Crosby-Moret, Jeremy McNichols, I don't think you want any of them in your lineup because they've been using a firm committee across the board. However, this is a good matchup for running backs, even though Miami's defense has been a little bit better against running backs as of late. I still think they are a plus matchup. Rodriguez scored a touchdown last week, did leave with a shoulder injury, but Dan Quinn has already said he's playing week 11, so Rodriguez will suit up. JCM took pretty much every carry once Rodriguez was gone, but it's very clearly, even in a plus matchup, an incredibly difficult backfield to predict like who's going to score the touchdown. And if none of them score a touchdown, then you're never going to be able to tell which one to start. So we're going to put Chris Rodriguez and JCM both in the shaky flex categories and definitely towards the bottom half of it. And then McNichols is just going to be a rather not in PPR leagues. Carolina at Atlanta. Rico Dowdle's rushing yard line is at 90.5 right now, which is crazy. The Falcons' run defense is completely just fallen off a cliff, as you saw last week what JT did to us. Not very pretty, but I mean, a line like that, he has completely just taken out Chuba Hubbard from the equation, which is a beautiful thing if you own Rico Dowdle, but we don't have to talk too much about this matchup here. We are just here to give you the juicy stuff for fantasy football. Of course, Bijan's going to go into the must-start category as well. And then you've got Algier, who's getting a ton of goal line carries, and I know everybody likes to try to like predict Algier's games, and if he scores a touchdown, the next week everyone's like, yeah, I'm going to start him. He's a pretty good flex play. He's just usually not. He's just usually an 8 for 30 guy. And if he doesn't score you a touchdown, he's an absolute donut in your lineup. So you could do worse. I would start Algier over JCM. Him and Chris Rodriguez are close. Terrell Jennings would be underneath them. But at the end of the day, Algier is going to be in the shaky flex category for me. He's not a dub flex. I know people are going to look at Carolina. We are 3.5-point favorites, 42.5-point total. You're going to think, oh, we're going to get inside the 5-yard line, the 10-yard line. Algier is going to score touchdowns. Banking on that is a recipe for failure for your fantasy team. Chicago at Minnesota. Minnesota, 3-point favorites here. 48.5-point total at home. Aaron Jones has been dominating touches, has been dominating snaps, has been dominating production, and has looked phenomenal for Minnesota. And this is a really good matchup against Chicago. Bottom 12 in fantasy points per game allowed to the running back position. 5th overall in just points per game allowed to opposing teams. He's going to go right into the feels good category. Jordan Mason has pretty much just been written off the face of the earth here. He can't really find much success on the ground. So he's going to go into the shaky flex category as well. And then on the flip side, this gets a little bit difficult. Minnesota's defense is good, but much better against the pass. So it's not what I'm like overly concerned about for DeAndre Swift and or Kyle Monangai. We saw Swift return from the groin injury last week. And in that game, Swift played on over 60% of the snaps. Kyle Monangai was down at around 30%. Despite Monangai scoring a touchdown very early on, it looked like it was going to be a big game for him. Things completely curtailed over to DeAndre Swift. I think there's a large part of it is in the fact that like Swift is much more of a big playmaker and he's much more of a pass catcher. And that's where the game script went. They needed to play in catch-up mode, but he played all the 2-minute drills. He got the majority of the inside the 5-yard line touches, ran a lot of routes, got a lot of carries there. So he was up to, I think he was around 16, 17, 18 touches where Monangai was sub 10. And I think, again, that's kind of what we've seen all season, despite Kyle Monangai's blow-up game against Cincinnati, extremely predictable. So for Swift, I think the matchup is tough. I think this is still going to be a very strong backfield split, but I'd much prefer starting Swift over Monangai, of course. So Swift is going to go into the dub flex category. Monangai is going to go into the shaky flex category, which it's a little bit hard to predict if you can start him with Swift on the field. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. So we've got a 49.5-point total. Remember the last time these two teams played, Jamar Chase had about 70,422 catches. But Jaylen Warren against the Bengals, this defense literally just does not want to tackle people. So Jaylen Warren's going straight into the feels good category. A rushing yardage prop of 69.5. The Bengals have allowed the single most fantasy points to the running back position. They are bottom 2 in EPA per rush and number 1 in terms of points per game allowed overall to opponents. So Jaylen Warren's there. Kenneth Gainwell, impossible to predict any big games that he has, but I'd imagine their game plan is going to be a very, very heavy dosage of running back touches. So I think you could do worse than Kenneth Gainwell, but I would hope you won't have to run him out. On the flip side, Chase Brown obviously having a bit of a resurgence, and now with Samaje Perine out. We don't have practice reports for this week yet, but Samaje Perine did suffer a high ankle sprain prior to the bye. They had the bye week, so maybe he gets back to limited practice. But if it's just Chase Brown and the Steelers defense, it was annoying because the Steelers defense all year, I was like, I think they're going to get it together eventually. And they just didn't. And then the first week, I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done trying to predict the Steelers being a good defense second half of the year. Then they have their breakout game. So the Steelers might be turning things around a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, as we saw, not against the Chargers, but the week prior. And maybe they're a little bit of a tougher matchup. Mike Tomlin's been talking a lot about having Jalen Ramsey back at safety now and Duggar and that being a much more like safe, cohesive unit. And I do think there's probably something to that. But for the time being, I'm going to throw Chase Brown into the dub flex category. But pretty strong start overall. Next up, we got Green Bay at the New York Giants. Green Bay, only 7-point favorites, 43.5-point total. It will be Jameis Winston starting. That feels like a kind of a fishy line right now. Is Vegas just out on Green Bay, calling them frauds? Didn't hear it from me. But Josh Jacobs is going straight into the must-start category. Of course, this is a phenomenal matchup for a power back like himself. On the flip side, you got Tracy, you got Devin Singletary. I don't know how you can trust either of them right now. They're going complete split backfield. This is one of the tougher matchups in all of football right now against the Green Bay Packers. Really, really tough run defense. And you got Emmanuel Wilson, who's backing up Josh Jacobs. Could get some touches in this game. Maybe had an explosive play. Maybe the game script gets away and he gets extra touches, but definitely don't want to have him in your lineup. Houston at Tennessee. We've got Houston as 7-point favorites. We don't know CJ Stroud's status yet. I would assume he's back, given that most people miss a game, but not typically 2 games from a concussion. For the Houston Texans, we saw Woody Marks almost completely take over that backfield last week, though this is a great matchup, which, again, I expect them to go with a really, really heavy dose of running back touches against Tennessee. 39.5-point total. They're not expecting much from the Tennessee offense. I think it's going to be a lot of good field position, a lot of time of possession for Houston. I think the Houston defensive line is going to eat Cam Ward alive here. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears going straight into the shaky flex category. Neither of them have really shown any upside since Tajay Spears has returned and really split the snap share completely in half at 50-50, plus the defense that they're going against is really tough. So for Woody Marks, it's been very inconsistent. It's been up and down all year. They've done the hot hand approach. They've gone to Woody and then back to Nick Chubb and then back to Woody, and it's been very difficult to predict. So on paper, it feels like Woody Marks has been the feels good, but because of the inconsistency in the play calling and the way that they've been using both of these backs, Woody Marks to me feels more like a dub flex. I'd be happy to have him in my lineup, but I don't feel great about him. Nick Chubb, would I be surprised if he scored a touchdown? He really hasn't done that much at all this year. So yeah, I kind of would be, but the matchup does say that, okay, maybe he gets 10 carries, maybe he gets a goal line score and gets you 10 to 12 fantasy points. So I could throw him into the shaky flex category just based off matchup. Chargers at Jacksonville. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 3-point underdogs, 43.5 point total. Travis Etienne has been kind of like one of the only bright spots in this offense the last couple weeks, maybe him and Parker Washington. So I think Travis Etienne, this is a good matchup. The Chargers' run defense is a lot worse than their pass defense. That's like the way that you have to be able to beat them. So he's going to go into the dub flex category because he's been dominating touches, dominating snaps. And with Brian Thomas Jr. banged up, with Brenton Strange banged up, with all these players banged up, they continue to feed him, a lot of carries and a lot of dump off. So Etienne's going to be a dub flex for me. Kamani Vidal, another one where I wasn't surprised last week. He got right back into the swing of things where one week they just kind of ride the hot hand. The next week it goes a little bit in the way of like a Jaret Patterson, but they're going to give Kamani Vidal the first crack at being the guy week in and week out. And we could see what that ends up being. And that's what we saw last week. So I imagine he's going to be the workhorse going into this week again. It is a tougher matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have been pretty stout against both the pass and the run this year. But, at the end of the day, I actually feel pretty damn good about Kamani Vidal, just because of the overall split share that he's getting in that backfield. And behind Herbert, you're always going to have lanes to run through. Tampa Bay at Buffalo. This is going to be a good game. 48.5 point total. Buffalo 5.5 point favorites. The Bucs run defense is actually pretty damn good, but I'm just not going to overthink James Cook. I know everyone wants to go back and forth on James Cook, and this has kind of been happening for 2 straight years. It feels like he goes through these streaks where he has 1 or 2 bad games in a row, and everyone's like, you should probably sell high on James Cook, and then he explodes for 200 yards. So just leave him in your fucking lineup and don't worry about James Cook. On the flip side, Bucky Irving is going to miss another game, at least one more game, which leaves the backfield open to Rachaad White and Sean Tucker again. Now, I know a lot of people think that this backfield split got closer last week, but it didn't. Rachaad White was still playing on 75% of the snaps compared to 25 to 30% for Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker outplayed him a little bit just in the efficiency for the running game, but Rachaad White still caught 5 passes. This is a pretty good matchup against a soft Buffalo run D that's missing a lot of players in the interior of their defensive line. So while it's hard to be as hyped about Rachaad White as when Bucky Irving first went out, obviously he was like the full-blown bell cow here, I still think he deserves to be in the dub flex category, and I think you can put Sean Tucker in the shaky flex category here. But I'm still starting Rachaad White with a pretty decent level of confidence. Seattle at the Los Angeles Rams here. This is going to be the game of the week. We got a 48.5 point total. We've got the Rams as 2.5 point favorites at home. The running back situation for the Rams is a little bit tricky. It's still leaning towards Kyren Williams in terms of the snap count, of course, and he's scoring touchdowns. But Blake Corum and him are really splitting every other drive. It just so happens that Corum's drives end up being shorter or ending quickly or have turnovers in them or whatever the case may be. And this is an incredibly tough run defense against Seattle. They are 31st in terms of EPA per rush allowed to opponent running backs. Now, Vegas's lines have Kyren and Blake Corum really far apart. 59.5 rushing yards for Kyren Williams, 27.5 for Blake Corum. So I think there is something to be said for that. In a game like this, a huge game, division game, this game is the most important game of either of their seasons up to this point. I think at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, Sean McVay trusts Kyren Williams more than he trusts Blake Corum. And when he does that, when he gets into crunch time, when he gets into those important moments, it's going to be Kyren Williams on the field. So matchup is scary. The split with Blake Corum is scary. I'm still going to throw him into the feels good category, but he's very much going to be at the end of that list. In my rankings right now, which are live on our site, bdge.co for week 11, Kyren Williams is definitely going to be closer to the running back 15, 16, 17. So mid RB2, maybe further down than that, than he is the normal top 12 guy based on all that kind of stuff. So I'm a little bit worried about him. I wouldn't play him in DFS or anything like that. I wouldn't take most of his props, but he's Kyren Williams. Good chance to score a touchdown. Should probably be in your lineup. With Blake Corum, he's going to end up being shaky flex, rather not. You guys know what I mean. You just don't want him in your lineup. For the Seattle Seahawks, now we got George Holani getting involved and getting first half touchdown runs last week. Now I don't know what to do. The Rams defense is fucking awesome too. So Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, both going to go into the shaky flex category. There are a ton of players I would play over them at this point. If you've been rostering those guys, you know how frustrating that backfield has been. You'll never be able to predict who's going to have the good game. Kenneth Walker gets carries. Zach Charbonnet gets the goal line carries, but doesn't get a ton of yards. Now Holani's in the picture. It's kind of disgusting out there. San Francisco at Arizona. We've got San Francisco as 2.5-point favorites, 48.5-point total. C-max lines are absurd, 71.5 rushing yards, 54.5 receiving yards. Of course, he goes into the must-start category. A little bit of hype around Brian Robinson because of like one fucking run. We love one-run sample sizes here in the fantasy football world, but yeah, he's going to be in a rather not for me. On the flip side, the Arizona running back group is kind of tricky here because we had Zonovan Knight get the majority of work last week, splitting it with Amari DiMarcado, but Zonovan Knight ended up twisting his ankle at the end of the game in garbage time. We don't have injury reports yet. The return for Trey Benson has been kind of like on a mysterious timeline. I thought he could return last week, but we really haven't heard anything from him. So I'm kind of expecting him not to play this week, but maybe that changes. If Trey Benson is playing and he's active, he's the guy I'm going to be rolling with. I don't know that I feel great about him in his very, very first week back from a long absence, so he would probably fall into the shaky flex category. If Zonovan Knight plays, he's probably going to go into the shaky flex category because you do end up needing a touchdown for him to come through. Amari DiMarcado, if Zonovan Knight doesn't play, then Michael Carter is going to get a bump up and he's going to be the early down guy with Amari DiMarcado playing the passing down role. DiMarcado is like busted out for big plays. Now and then this continues to happen to him like game over game, year over year, but you can't depend on him to play in your lineup. If you're really desperate in a full PPR league, I get it. Like you can throw Amari DiMarcado as a shaky flex in there. If Zonovan Knight doesn't play, Michael Carter is going to be a shaky flex, but pretty much any Arizona Cardinal player, even if Trey Benson is active, does not really crack my top 24. Moving to Baltimore at Cleveland. So we've got Baltimore as 7.5-point favorites, a 39.5-point total. That's got to be like the lowest of a Lamar Jackson era line. Pretty damn low there. Suspiciously low there. I know when they played Cleveland early on, I think it was week 2, the ground game did not move well. And as you could see, Cleveland's run defense is dead last in terms of what they've allowed to running backs up to this point in the year. Dead last in fantasy points per game allowed. Dead last in EPA per rush allowed. It's still Derrick Henry. He's still viable for 2 touchdowns any given day. So he's going to go straight into the feels good category. I said that as if I was going to put him into the must start. I mean, listen, there have been games where he just doesn't look that good. He doesn't have that level of explosiveness. If the offensive line isn't blocking as well, or if the Cleveland defensive line is getting into the backfield, it takes a little bit for Henry to kind of ramp up here. But Henry's probably going to be in your lineup, although I'm not overly optimistic about his outlook this week against Cleveland in Cleveland based on what we saw in week 2, the first time they played. On the flip side, Quinshon Judkins gets the Ravens run defense, which their defense has been a lot better since their players have got back and been healthy. And now they're the favorites to win the AFC North, which is not really surprising, but Quinshon Judkins has been awesome. I don't want to overthink this one. He's definitely cooled off over the last few weeks relative to what he did early on, but his touch counts are still insane. He's still, for the most part, seeing 20 plus touches a week, and any running back getting that level of volume plus his explosiveness, his power, his goal line prowess, like he's going to go into the feels good category and feel pretty damn good about it. Moving on to KC at Denver. So we've got KC as 3.5-point favorites. They're on the road, 43.5-point total. It sounds like all reports are leading towards J.K. Dobbins missing this game and maybe an extended period after that. We'll have to see what the Denver Broncos do at the running back position, because right now on the roster, they have RJ Harvey, they have Tyler Bidet, they have Jaleel McLaughlin, and the only player on their practice squad at the running back position is Deuce Vaughn. So they've got about 6 dudes that are 5'6" and under 200 pounds. Sean Payton has almost always operated with a bigger back. I don't know if this means they sign a veteran. I don't know if they're going to force like Jaleel McLaughlin into the early down role. I'm confused as to what's going to happen here. I think the most obvious answer is that RJ Harvey just gets a bump in base packages and gets more carries. I also think there's a very real world where RJ Harvey, while he does get a bump, it feels pretty obvious that Sean Payton still does not trust him fully in early down situations, still does not trust his vision and his ability to just do the right thing on a play in and play out basis. As an early down back, this is a very tough matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs run defense, which is bottom 6 in fantasy points allowed to the running back position. So I'm not overly optimistic about RJ Harvey's rushing workload or rushing efficiency that we're going to see in this game. Overall, though, if J.K. Dobbins is out, I do expect Harvey to get somewhere between 12 and 15 touches. And with his explosiveness, he doesn't need to be as efficient or great on a down-to-down basis when you can rip off 20, 30, 40-yard plays on any given down. So Harvey's going to go into the dub flex category for me, and I feel relatively good about it. If it was a better matchup, if they were playing against, I don't know, Cincinnati or Chicago or the Giants or something like that, I'd feel a lot better about it. But the matchup mixed in with I'm not sure what this committee is going to look like. It's not going to be RJ Harvey playing 80% of the snaps. I think that feels very, very clear, but he'll likely operate as the lead back here. I know one of the beat reporters for Denver tweeted something out yesterday. He was like, I wonder if Sean Payton gives Latavius Murray a call and asks him if he has like 4 to 6 games left in the tank for him, which like really wouldn't surprise me. And I wouldn't be surprised if they signed Latavius Murray and then Latavius Murray outsnapped RJ Harvey like next week. Wouldn't put my money on it, but it also wouldn't shock me. On the flip side, we've got the Chiefs coming off of their bye, and it sounds like Pacheco's going to miss another game, which puts Kareem Hunt back into the starting role at the running back position. We did just see that not turn out great against the Bills. He scored a touchdown, but wasn't very high volume, didn't have a lot of yardage. So you are needing a touchdown out of Kareem Hunt in this one. His anytime touchdown odds are at plus 115, so nearly-ish a coin flip, which I think is valid. When I look at Kareem Hunt, like I'd rather start Kareem Hunt than a Tyler Algier or a Chris Rodriguez. I think he's like close to that tier, but he's below the Woody Marks, the Travis Etienne's, or Rashad Whites, who, you know, can catch a lot of passes, can make explosive plays. So he's somewhere very, very much in the middle of where this tier starts and where this tier ends. So you guys can kind of make up your mind on that. I'll throw him into the shaky flex tier just because the matchup is very tough against Denver. And you kind of know what you're getting. If he doesn't score a touchdown, you're probably getting like 6 or 7 points out of Kareem Hunt there. Rashard Smith, unfortunately, did not really show anything last week despite Pacheco missing. Detroit at Philadelphia. We've got Philly as 2.5 point favorites, 46.5 point total. Feels a little bit low given these offenses, but this is Sunday Night Football. Should see some fireworks. The Detroit Lions, very good run defense, as we know, can definitely be attacked through the air, so I would imagine that's going to be a bit of their game plan. 15.5 receiving yards for Saquon feels pretty damn good. I might actually hit that right now if it's open. As always, you could track any picks, spread picks, totals, player props that I take on Pickett. The app is completely free. Use BDGE when you download the app, and it'll automatically take you to our profile, and you can see everything from there. Sync any of the books that you have. So Saquon, I understand he's had, a disappointing season relative to everything. You're just never going to sit Saquon. Jahmyr Gibbs, you're never going to sit him either. Behind Jahmyr Gibbs, you got David Montgomery, who's been very up and down as well. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles' run defense has not been what they were last year, so they're a little bit of a better defense to run against than we've seen. Demon's gotten 13 touches or more in 4 of the last 5 games, also 15 or more in 3 of the last 5 games. The biggest change here is obviously now Dan Campbell has taken over play calling duties in Detroit, and we saw them going very pass heavy, very play action heavy, and I think that probably lends itself more towards Jahmyr Gibbs playing a much higher percentage of snaps going forward. So Demon's a dude that kind of fits into that Kareem Hunt, Ramondre Stevenson tier, where it's like he'll probably get 10 touches. He probably needs a touchdown to come through for you. He's not going to catch a lot of passes, but I probably do prefer David Montgomery to a Kareem Hunt. So you know what? I'll throw him at the bottom of the dub flex tier, but they're kind of connected here. And then lastly, we've got Dallas at the Las Vegas Raiders. Monday Night Football, 50.5 point total here. Dallas is 3.5 point favorites on the road in Las Vegas. I mean, phenomenal matchup for both teams, both offenses. So honestly, I'm going to throw Genty into the must start because of the matchup, and I'm also just going to throw Javonte into the must start category, just given his touchdown prowess, given how much work he gets in that backfield. And I like the matchup against the Raiders here coming off the bye. Should be quite spicy for him. So let's put it into poster mode. You could see everything going on here. One last final look for Week 11 running back rankings. As I said, tomorrow will be the wide receiver version of this. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, if you are new here, think about throwing the D in that subscribe button so you can watch tomorrow's version. All of my rankings are already live on BDGE.co. Become a Big Dog member in order to see them. The cheapest way to do it, getting 3 months of the Big Dog membership for free by going to MGM, our partner app, either the app or the website, using code BDGE when you deposit just $10 or more. If you're a first-time depositor, play any slip on there. I already gave you a couple that I liked throughout the course of this video. If you was listening, then play them. And as soon as you do so, they'll send you a promo code in their app to use on our website, BDGE.co, 3 months free of the Big Dog membership. All right, I love y'all. I will see you tomorrow. Smoke cheese.